Today, the judge told the 62-year-old he was unfit to live in human society.
This is the clip where Peter is being led out of the courtroom. And there's a moment here. Look, I can't watch it. Look, there. Look at his face. That's the face I used to see all the time. I can't even bear to watch this anymore. His face just changes to sheer evil. I hope that's the last time I ever have to see that again. Sorry. It's been quite hard talking with you today, reliving again and again and again the vile nature of this person's existence. I needed to get away as quickly as possible. I can't tell you how scared I was. He's a psychopath. Peter Tobin is a psychopath, purely and simply. It makes me feel extremely lucky to be alive. It's just so cruel. It's just so cruel to do that to me. I have done nothing wrong at all. I've done nothing wrong except try to be the most perfect wife I could be to him. When I met Peter, I was 16 years old. I became a wild child really about the age of 14 when I discovered boys and alcohol. So one of the things I really enjoyed doing was getting dressed up, short skirts, lots of makeup, over the top, and going down to the local bar on a Saturday night, stay there partying and dancing till 2 o'clock in the morning. I went in one day and he was there. I just introduced myself and started talking to him.
So, you gonna buy me a drink?
Yeah, I'll buy you a drink.
I really, really wanted to become a wife and to look after and to nurture a husband. And I think I was looking for someone to protect me and look after me. He must have had 18 years on me, maybe 20. I think he was 36, 37. He seemed a mature father figure that I probably were yearning for.
Here, take my jacket.
Thank you.
Peter used to make me feel very special. He used to call me little nicknames. He was calling me his darling and his pet and his hen all the time. It didn't take me very long to really feel that I'd fallen in love with Peter.
You know what, Kathy? I think I'm falling for you.
Peter told me that if I wanted to, I could move in with him. And I was really looking forward to the adult life that he suggested we could have together.
I promise I will take care of you.
So I think from the moment I first saw him in the pub to when I moved in was probably no more than 4 or 5 weeks. The first month or 6 weeks that I was living with Peter, everything was fantastic. But it wasn't long before I realised he wasn't comfortable with me going out on my own.
What are you all dressed up for? We're not going out tonight.
We always go out.
No.
Very quickly we weren't going back down to the pub which we had met in, and we weren't seeing people that we used to see.
I wish you would stop trying so hard to look like trash.
My appearance gradually changed, and I hadn't even realised it was happening. Well, I'm just looking at this picture and I barely recognise myself. I have to look twice at this picture to see that it is me. The clothing I'm wearing is a very bland, drab colour, which is not me at all. There's virtually no makeup on my face either. If I put some makeup on, you might say you look like a bit of a tart with all that on, so I didn't want to look like a tart. Pretty much unrecognisable as the person that I had been before. I think the reason that Peter wanted to control the clothes I was wearing was really because I think he was jealous of me getting any additional attention from other men. And sure enough, no one paid me any attention at all.
And when I say clean, I mean clean. That's sweep, vacuum. You got that?
Vacuum.
Good. After you do that, I need my shirts pressed for tomorrow.
A typical day would be me being left a list of instructions as to what things needed to be done that day, which would include food shopping and cleaning the house.
I'll see you later.
And I would just get myself up and start progressing with my list until the end of the day when he'd come back for dinner. He would control all of the money, and I had no funds of my own. He would give me specifically an amount of money to go to the food shopping with, and when I got back from the food shop, he would go through the receipt to check that the things I had bought were things that he deemed necessary. I remember there was a time I went to get the grocery shopping, and I saw something I wanted. It might have been lipstick. When I came home, he scrutinised the receipt.
Kathy? What the hell is this?
He made me feel really awful about having bought something for myself, and made me feel so bad about that I didn't do it again.
Hey. You need to start thinking about us, and not just you. Stop being so selfish.
The first time I saw Peter angry, it was a lovely sunny day, and I asked Peter what he'd like for his dinner that night. He said pork chops. I was very excited with that because I was going to cook something that he really, really wanted for dinner. But I've never grilled chops before, so I wasn't aware of how long they actually took to cook. As they started to change colour after maybe 5 minutes, I thought that was sufficient. So I then proudly put everything onto the plate, put it in front of him with a big smile on my face, and he took one cut into the pork chop and screamed out that they were not cooked.
What is this?
They were undercooked. What am I trying to do? Am I trying to kill him?
I didn't know.
Would you eat this? Look at this. Would you eat that?
I'm sorry, I'll fix it, I promise.
You're just an idiot. That's what you are.
And before I could have a chance to say, let me take them back and cook them a little longer, the plate had been picked up and it flew past my head, smashing into the wall next to me. And I was just stunned, absolutely stunned. I'd never seen him angry before. It came out of nowhere. After the plate hit the wall, he got up and stormed out of the room. I didn't understand what I had done so badly wrong. No more than 5 minutes later, he was back in the room again, putting his arms around me, saying it wasn't my fault, gave me a kiss and said it would never happen again. It made me question myself.
It was my fault.
And think, well, how can I not live up to this man's expectations? I must try harder. So that's what I did. I would regularly be called all the time. So go and get my tea, go and get my tea. And if I didn't do it quickly, you're just a slow. And it would be about minor things, ridiculous things. There's no reason to speak badly to someone when you're just asking them to make a cup of tea, but he would. And I didn't really understand that because I wasn't doing anything wrong. I can recall quite clearly. He wanted some toast, so I obligingly got up and started making the toast for him. and one of the slices had burned slightly.
You expect me to eat this?
He said, "You've burnt the toast," with a couple of expletives added into that. And I said, "Well, just calm down, I'll make some more. It's not a problem."
Not to worry, there's more coming.
What did you just say to me?
He lunged at me and grabbed me around the neck and pushed me against the wall. I can't tell you how scared I was.
You expect me to eat this?
Not to worry, there's more coming.
He lunged at me and grabbed me around the neck and pushed me against the wall in the kitchen. Shouted and spat in my face almost. I was petrified. It was the ferocity of the lunge. It was very fast.
If you ever question me again, I will break you like a twig.
And then he just let me go and walked off as though nothing had happened, very calmly. My thought process was, well, if I'm better, if I work harder, if I learn from this, then it won't happen again. I really wanted to be married because I thought it was important that a child coming into the world should have married parents. There had only been 1 or 2 incidents of erratic behaviour, so I thought that marriage was a good idea. I'd had a very difficult childhood. My mother died when I was only 8 years old. My grandparents had looked after me from the age of 8 to 16. Peter was going to be offering me a much brighter future than the one I'd left behind. This is the man that I married. You see, there's a smile on his face. There's no sign of malice here at all. I was happy on that day. And everything you're seeing here just looks like lovely, happy family life. There's not any indication here of the man that he was to become at all. And here's another one with Peter looking like the doting father. He actually was very good with Daniel. He would often run around the back garden with him. There was always lots of laughter when he was with Daniel. Yeah, it was a happy time. However, everything deteriorated at quite a fast pace. He took my car keys off of me at one point because there was no need for me to drive. He would do the driving for me, and I became dependent on him to go anywhere. Calls to friends and family became less frequent.
Daniel's doing great. He's getting so big now.
I was only allowed to make 1 phone call a week to my grandparents.
Yeah,
And he would always monitor that.
everything's great. Everything's going really well.
He'd sit right next to me so he could hear both sides of the conversation to make sure that I wasn't saying anything that he would disapprove of.
Listen, I have to run. Daniel's waking up from his nap.
I was told to wrap the call up after usually 2 or 3 minutes, so it was always very short and very sweet.
Bye.
I didn't like the way that made me feel, but these few minutes precious phone calls were all I had, and I wasn't going to do anything to upset getting those. It gradually became that he would be with me 24/7, always by my side, always monitoring me, even just to go do the food shopping. Now, I wasn't allowed to go to the shops alone. I wasn't able to go for a walk or go into the back garden. If I went into the back garden at the house, he would always come with me for fear I might be talking to a neighbour over the fence. He was following me everywhere, even just putting the trash out. Before very long, my outings outside of the house were just literally once a week to get the grocery shopping in with him. The rest of the time I'd be expected to stay in the house. I did start to question whether I wanted to be in this situation any longer. But I'm a very proud person, And I really wanted to make the relationship work. I didn't want to return to my family and say, I failed at this. I've had a child at a young age and now a disastrous marriage. I'm not even 19 years old. So I didn't think of leaving. One day, as he left the house, he grabbed my car keys, which was something he'd had a habit of doing anyhow.
Honey, those are my keys.
I know.
But this time he took the front door key with him. And as he left the house, he set the key into the door and turned the lock. This was the first time he'd ever locked me into a house before. I had absolutely no idea what was going on at all. I couldn't understand why he'd locked me in the house. So the four walls became my prison. There was one time when Peter left the house to go out, and as he walked around the corner out of sight, up the garden path came this large man, broad, stockily built, and had a very imposing manner as he walked to the door.
I'm sorry, I can't let you in. I don't have a key.
That's all right. Peter gave me a key.
I had never seen this man before. I just assumed he was there to see Peter. So I explained that Peter was out and would be back in an hour or 2 hours. And the guy said, that's fine, I'll just wait. I said, all right then, that's okay, I'll make a cup of tea. And I sat him in the lounge. I thought nothing more of it at that point. It seemed very innocent. I had never seen this man before. So I explained that Peter was out and would be back in an hour or 2 hours. And the guy said, that's fine, I'll just wait. It became apparent that every time Peter went out, this man arrived. I don't even recall him having any conversation with me at all. It was just, I'm here, I'm a presence in the house, and that's the way it's going to be. He would never be sinister in any shape or form. He would literally come in, I would always offer a cup of tea, all very inane, innocent things, but actually what it was doing was keeping me under literally 24-hour surveillance now. I was a prisoner in my own home. And even if I was to get out of the house, where would I go? Where would I go? He had all the money, he had my car keys. So it would be just a pointless endeavour for me to just try and escape. He was spending more and more time out of the house in the evenings, and he was going out for longer periods of time. I couldn't understand why he needed to go out so often in the evenings, for hours and hours and hours at a time. My only thought that I came to, my conclusion, was that maybe he was having an affair. But there was no evidence of that, and I certainly was not going to ask that question at all. I was just grateful for a night away from him. I was in bed one evening and I heard the front doorbell go, and he answered the door and I could hear a muffled female voice talking to him. And I didn't understand why a girl would be there. And about 20 minutes or so later, I could hear noises, which were quite clearly sex, quite aggressive sex. There was lots of screaming from the girl. I didn't really know what to do. So I got out of bed and went downstairs to investigate. I discovered Peter having sex with this lady. She was on all fours on the floor, and he was pulling at her hair very violently. And there were tears in her eyes. And he was slapping her on the backside with his hand violently. This seemed to make him smile as I walked into the room. And I remember him saying quite clearly, "This is what women do to really please their man. And you should learn from this. You sit and watch and learn from how she's doing it. Because she's good. She's better than you. She knows what to do." So I sat down and watched, as I was told to do, while he continued to abuse this lady in front of me. I was powerless to stop it. As time went on, this became a regular event. The doorbell would be rung more often, and earlier in the evening. It seemed that now that I'd discovered what Peter was doing, he felt he now had the right to conduct himself in this manner at any time he felt like it. So I learnt not to go down to the sitting room on those occasions at all, but I could hear them crying and screaming. He was very violent with these prostitutes that came to the house. He seemed to be delighting in the pain that he was inflicting on these girls. I heard someone calling out and screaming quite a lot. I went downstairs. There were tears in the girl's eyes. It looked very vicious and very rough and very aggressive. And I shouted to him to stop. And he just pulled me into the room, pulled my dressing gown and night clothes off, put me into the same position, and continued to have sex with me, very angrily, very violently. He was saying things like, "This is what you've been missing. This is how it's going to be from now on." And I was crying. I tried to stop crying, because I thought that was just annoying him. And that didn't make any difference. And my head was hurting. And my body was hurting. Sorry. It's just so cruel. It's just so cruel to do that to me. I have done nothing wrong at all. I've done nothing wrong except try to be the most perfect wife I could be to him. They treated me like dirt. Worse than dirt. It really was revolting. And I had done nothing wrong at all. Nothing. Sorry. I didn't know what to do. I did not know what to do. Just made me more convinced that I needed to get away as quickly as possible, because it was escalating out of control now, really out of control. I was so scared. I was so scared.
I can't do this.
You can't do what?
She said, "No,
Where are you gonna go?
I'll kill you first. And then I'll kill your son." Every day when something really bad happened, I thought, he can't get any worse than this. He really can't do anything worse than what he's just done to me today. And then the next day, there'd be something worse.
Are you crying again? I'm talking to you.
He was very unhappy with me, as he always was each day, calling me names, making me feel very small and very pitiful. And I just thought, do you know, I've had enough now. I really have had enough. I can't see any point in continuing this at all.
I can't do this.
You can't do what? You can't do what?
I can't do this.
So I just said to him, I think we need to get a divorce. It's just, it's not working, and I can't carry on anymore.
Where are you gonna go? You don't have any friends, do you? I let you leave the house. I let you go to the store. I let you do a lot of things. Now where are you gonna go?
I will not live like this anymore.
He had a very violent reaction. He grabbed Daniel very quickly.
You think I'm gonna let you leave with my son?
And I didn't know what was going on. I didn't understand. I'm shouting at him, you know, what are you doing? You know, what are you doing with Daniel? You know, because I'd never seen him do anything towards Daniel at all before.
Please, please don't hurt him. Please, we'll make this work. Just don't.
He ran up to the top of the staircase. He stood on the top landing and was dangling him over the banisters at the top of the staircase. I just looked up to see my son hanging 20 foot in the air above me, with the most unpredictable person holding my son's life in his hands. A divorce, he said. No, I'll kill you first, and then I'll kill your son. You're never leaving me. I was absolutely petrified. I'm just begging Peter to just put Daniel down. Ignore my stupid suggestion. It was a crazy suggestion. Just put Daniel down and forget I ever said anything. Eventually he did pull Daniel back over and dumped him on the floor and walked off. That was the turning point for me. That was it. That was the point that I knew I had to get out. I had to leave him. However I did it, I had to go. And I had to do it as quickly as possible because I didn't know how quickly his anger and frustration towards Daniel would escalate. But it seemed like an impossible task to escape from him. I was watched all the time. How could I possibly get away? One afternoon, he came to me about 5 o'clock and said, I'm going out. He was rushing. And he shouted at me as he went out of the door, I'll be back in an hour and a half. And then he just went. And the door slammed behind him. And there was no lock. He didn't lock it. And I'm thinking, has he just gone out and not locked the door? So I went to the front door to check, because this must be a trick, surely. And turned the handle. And the door opened. I thought maybe he hadn't locked the door because the minder was due to come round and look after me. And so I waited and waited a couple of minutes and no one arrived. No minder turned up. I thought it was probably a trap. He's probably just round the corner waiting to see if I would take those tentative steps outside. And I waited probably another 5 minutes and no one turned up. And I thought, it's now. I've got to go now. So I rushed into the house, grabbed a few of Daniel's clothes.
Daniel, we have to go.
And the small pot of change that I'd managed to squirrel away, put that into my pocket.
Come on. Come on with Mom.
Put a coat onto my son.
Come on.
And walked out the front door. soon as I got outside, I thought, he's going to kill me because I'm not allowed to be outside. And almost turned around to go back inside again. Almost. But I thought, no, I've got to do this for Daniel. I was convinced that the minder was going to come round the corner. Peter would come back early. One of his friends would see me and phone him and tell him that I was out. And every single time a car came round the corner, I thought, this is it, this is it. He's got me. I can't tell you how scared I was. Because I knew that the consequences of this, I knew that the consequences of this, of my actions, were, well, there could be no choice. He was going to have to kill me. That's what was going to happen to me. I just held my son and I cried really quietly and hugged him and told him I loved him. I told him, whatever happens, remember that your mummy loves you. And I was trying to do it so calmly, so that he wouldn't be scared. But I wanted him to remember that I loved him, in case I didn't make it. Sorry. I wanted him to know that his mummy loved him, in case I didn't make it. I started smiling again. Daniel was really happy. It was just a very delightful time for us both. For so many years. I was so trampled down that I'd forgotten this life existed. And I just screamed. Closed the curtains, locked the door, and stayed inside. He could have been anywhere. I'd been apart from Peter for quite a number of weeks now. He would be regularly phoning me to beg my forgiveness and please can we start again and try again. So I was absolutely convinced he would never let me go. Early one morning, a phone call came through to me from the police.
Hello?
And I said, what's this about? I don't understand. And they said, Peter Tobin has raped and assaulted and left for dead 2 14-year-old girls.
No, I don't believe that.
All the assaults I'd been put through, I sort of put down to being his wife and being not a very good one. But to be told that he's raped children and left them for dead just was a step that was so incredulous to me. It must be wrong. And I said, this must be wrong. You're wrong. And they said, no, we're not. And I just felt sick to the bottom of my stomach. Fear that I lived with constantly disappeared from my body. The weight lifted off of my shoulders, and I knew I was safe. It was a very strange feeling to be happy again. Really strange. I'd completely forgotten what it was like. I had forgotten that I have a right not to be living in fear every day. I have a right to have a normal life. I deserved it. One Saturday morning, about 9:30, my aunt phoned me and said, "Kathy, turn on the TV now." And I said, "Why?" Should just turn on the TV, get a news channel on.
His name is Peter Tobin, a known sex offender jailed in 1994 for sexually assaulting two 14-year-olds in Hampshire.
I put the news on, and there in front of me was a picture of Peter, and it was saying this man is wanted for questioning about a murder of a young student.
All I could say was that it was a horrific and very, very violent attack on a young lady.
I just screamed. I let out this blood-curdling scream. No one knew where he was, but the police were asking the public to keep an eye out for this man.
Mr. Tobin is considered a potential risk to members of the public. Any person who sees this man is advised not to approach him.
I'm sure this is not the end of it. He could do anything. Now that he's committed murder, you can do anything. The safe and secure life that I had built for Daniel and I suddenly came crashing down. I was absolutely convinced that he was coming after me for taking his son away from him. He could have been anywhere. He could have been around the corner. He could be tracking me down, planning and plotting for my demise. And every day from that moment on, I had to watch over my shoulder, and I was not leaving that house at all until they caught him. And I was really worried that they wouldn't catch him, and that I would have to live like this forever. The police, they phoned me out of the blue.
Hello?
And said, just to let you know, before you see it on the television, the level of violence in this particular murder implies that someone of his age has not done this for the first time. This level of violence is something they see in someone that is a serial murderer. You don't just get up one day and commit a murder of this kind. You build up to it. It still was a shock the next day to turn the news on, to find the news helicopters hovering over the top of the building with an aerial shot of the forensic teams in the back garden. And then the newsreel came up to say they had in fact uncovered a body.
Her body was found here, buried in the back garden of what was Peter Tobin's Margate home. She'd been bound and gagged, and her body wrapped in rubbish bags.
This photograph of Vicky Hamilton is particularly hard to see. She's a young girl in her school uniform. I can't believe the man I married could have done such atrocities to anyone, really. But not to someone who's so young and vibrant. Just a child. Barely out of school. It makes me feel completely sick that, as I say, my son and myself were in a house just yards away from one of his victims. And at this point I'm thinking, it's a big garden. You know, what else are they going to find? And they were digging away when they came across another one.
Another awful discovery at 50 Irvine Drive. The garden has given up the second of its terrible secrets.
I was shocked and sickened because this was underneath my son's sandpit.
Neighbours had actually seen Peter Tobin digging a deep hole in the summer of 1991. Peter Tobin had said he was digging a sandpit for his son.
Peter had built the sandpit in the back garden. Daniel had a bucket and a spade, and he'd love it. So I would regularly see him sitting there and building sandcastles, thoroughly enjoying himself. And 2 girls' bodies were underneath it. I can't even put it into words. They are looking into numerous girls' disappearances that have occurred in times and in areas where he was. And they're quite convinced that as the years go on, they will find other girls that they will be linking to him.
They include at least 8 unsolved murders from 1968 onwards. All the victims were girls, the youngest aged 9.
It was suggested it could be as many as 46.
Many more families still wonder whether he killed their daughter.
So it makes me think now about the times that he used to just disappear for a few hours or sometimes even overnight without telling me where he was going or what he was doing. And it makes me wonder if he was perhaps stalking and killing other young girls. I wonder if I could have perhaps done something in my time when I was with him that would have prevented him being able to commit these murders. Should I have seen something differently at the time and been able to notify the police or something? I do feel I've missed something, but I don't know what other signs I could have looked for. I blame myself entirely. I made choices to get involved with this man. I made choices to have a child with this man, not realizing who he was. I made these choices. I have worked tirelessly every minute of every day to make it up to my son for the horrors that I put him through. Yeah, that's all I can do.
A young mother on the verge of a new beginning.
She always used to talk about her wedding. She had everything planned out.
She was going to be living the life that she's always dreamt of having.
Violently struck down.
Not just homicide, but an act of rage.
I had no idea why somebody would want to do that.
Police chase a deranged killer down a sinister path.
He was a big heroin dealer in Jackson. Someone burnt the house down.
Through a maze of twisted theories.
Maybe this was a retaliation.
It was probably self-induced.
You mean suicide?
Yeah.
Until the case takes a mind-bending turn.
He looked at me and said, "You have it all wrong."
That person never was on our radar.
Just an epic tragedy.
I was almost in disbelief.
That's just something that was entirely unexpected from the beginning.
Until we try to rule them in or rule them out, I don't know that any of us are safe.
On Sunday, August 10th, 2014, in an upper-middle-class neighborhood in Jackson, Michigan, a quiet morning is broken by a desperate phone call.
Our dispatch did receive a 911 call from a panicked individual.
911.
Yeah, I need somebody up to my house right now. My fiance, I think she's dead.
Okay, so has she been sick?
No, there's blood everywhere.
Do you know where it's coming from?
I don't know.
Okay, can you tell if she's breathing?
She's not. She's cold. She's dead. Oh my God.
Police race to the home just before 11 a.m. where they're greeted by the caller and 3 young girls.
He had said that the deceased body was up in a bedroom upstairs. There was 2 bedrooms that we walked past, which were bedrooms where the kids had been sleeping.
With the 3 children who lived there safely out of the house and the crime scene locked down, detectives come upon a grisly sight.
As we enter the bedroom, then we do see the body. It was slumped down between the bed and the wall. And there was quite a bit of blood. At that point, we see zip ties on her hands, and we see what appears to be several stab marks.
A zip tie was wrapped around each wrist, with another looped through it and cut, as though she'd been strapped to the bed and then cut loose.
We, at that point, determined we likely had a homicide.
The police talk to Eric Wolf, who placed the 911 call. He tells them the victim is his fiancée, 28-year-old Frances Craig. He also makes a startling admission.
He said that he had worked all night, so when he came home, after finding Franny in the condition she was in, he then went downstairs and slept on the recliner chair. For whatever reason, he did not call 911 until a couple hours later in the morning.
Frances's 2 daughters and Eric's little girl were all in the house at the time. While Eric slept, his 10-year-old child walked into a horrifying scene.
Eric's daughter, Lexi, went into the bedroom and clearly could tell that something was amiss. She even touched her and could tell that she was not moving. I think she might even have described her as a little cold.
Lexi went downstairs and woke up her father. And that's when he finally called 911.
We all felt that a normal, average individual would, at the bare minimum, make sure their fiance, the person they're about to get married to and spend the rest of their life with, is okay.
Eric's decision to walk away from the murder scene is a red flag for investigators. And so is his casual demeanor.
When Eric was interviewed by one of the other detectives at the scene initially, the detective said he didn't seem too concerned, didn't seem too upset about what had happened.
Detectives plan to grill Eric about his suspicious behavior. But first, they need to finish processing the crime scene.
There was approximately 90 stab wounds, and they were in a very aggressive manner.
It was overkill. Not just committing a homicide, but an act of rage where it's over the top.
The rule of thumb is on a situation where there's multiple, and I'm talking more than a dozen stab wounds, it's usually a crime of passion. So at that point, you typically look at somebody close to the victim.
Investigators sift through the bloody mess for clues. There's no sign of a murder weapon, but plenty of signs of conflict.
The crime lab, which is the CSI people, they responded to the scene. They were there for multiple hours collecting a ton of evidence.
While the forensics team works the scene inside. Shocked friends and family have gathered outside the house.
I didn't believe her. I thought it was a lie. It's not real. It didn't happen.
I had no idea why somebody would want to do that. Frances was just an amazing person all around. Frances and I worked together. We hung out outside of work together. We would hang out with our kids.
Investigators learned that Frances had 2 daughters with an ex-boyfriend. The oldest is 5 years old, and the youngest is 3.
Our boyfriends actually were friends, and he
brought her to my house one day, and that was like the beginning of a beautiful friendship. It felt like we've known each other for years. She's a wonderful, amazing mom, the best mom that I know. She was the best person I've ever met and known in my life.
She would do anything for anyone.
Frances and the father of her children broke up, but she still dreamed of getting married.
She always used to talk about her wedding and everything, and at this point, she didn't even have a boyfriend. She had everything planned out.
Dreams became reality in 2012 when she started dating 29-year-old Eric Wolf.
Eric was a divorced single father, one young child. He had primary custody over her.
2 years into the relationship, Eric and Frances moved in together. Despite working 2 jobs, Frances did all she could to make time for her children and Eric's daughter, too.
She was constantly doing things with her girls when she wasn't working, even with her stepdaughter. She was amazing.
Her days were long, but her life was full. Eric proposed, and the couple bought a house together.
Frances was very, very excited about getting married. Like, every day she was tagging me on Facebook or, like, sending me pictures. You know, she thought she was going to be living the life that she's always dreamt of having and having that fairy tale wedding.
But when detectives pressed Franny's friends, they learned that Eric had a dark side.
They told me that they weren't super fond of her fiance.
Because my daughter spent a lot of time with Frances. She was like a second mother to my daughter. And my daughter did tell me several times of Eric being kind of like a drill sergeant. He seemed real cocky, just everything was about him and his daughter more so than Frances and her girls. I felt in my gut from the moment I found out that something happened to Frances, I felt like Eric had something to do with it. I didn't know what, I didn't know how, I didn't know why. I just felt like it was because of him that she's gone.
Police are determined to get to the bottom of Eric's suspicious behavior.
When we interviewed him, he stated when he saw her in the condition she was in, he did not call 911, and he didn't seem too upset about what had happened. At that point, he was somebody, definitely a person of interest in the homicide of Franny Craig.
Coming up, Eric's story gets stranger by the minute.
I didn't know if this was, like self-inflicted accident.
That's what we need to find out too.
A tiny clue reveals a big surprise.
There was DNA found on Franny's zip tie.
And when police find the killer, it shocks everyone.
I remember thinking to myself, I'm glad we're sitting down right now.
After calling 911 following the brutal murder of his fiancée, Frances Craig, Eric Wolf is questioned by police about how he discovered his fiancée's body.
I came home this morning because I work 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. I went upstairs, I checked both the girls' rooms before going in our bedroom.
Okay, so you came around to the foot of the bed and kind of looked to see where she was at.
That's exactly what I did.
Okay. Did you see anything on the mattress when you first came in?
I saw, I guess I might have saw that streak, but it didn't jump out like blood or anything.
Okay, so you saw something that just didn't jump out to you.
Yeah, I thought
this is bad.
Eric did not seem to register surprise, anger, hurt, anything that I think we all normally would want to see from a loved one when somebody is killed.
I thought maybe she had been drinking or something because she was in like almost like a funny position on the floor, which she doesn't drink hardly ever. I knew better than to wake her. I know from prior experience, whenever I've woken her up, she's not a morning person and I get yelled at.
As the interview creeped close to an hour, Eric suggests a much darker reason for ignoring his fiancée sprawled out on the bedroom floor.
Up until just now, maybe since we've been here, I thought that if it wasn't an accident, then it was probably self-induced.
You mean suicide?
Yeah.
He indicated that he thought maybe she had committed suicide and just did not want to deal with it at that point. We found that being very odd and a red flag. Typically on a suicide, you'll find one stab wound or one gunshot wound. You won't find multiple stab wounds.
The prospect of Franny inflicting 90 stab wounds with her hands zip-tied sounds preposterous to the police. Even if it was physically possible, why wouldn't Eric have reacted with alarm?
So you didn't want to come to grips with it if she had done so. Right, because you don't want to.
To investigators, Eric's shifting story doesn't add up. Why would a woman everyone described as happy and carefree take her own life?
And the only reason I say self-induced is just because of how high-strung everything is right before this wedding, and
it's a lot of stress.
Yeah.
Eric's strange comments could signal that he's traumatized over the death of his fiancée, or that he's hiding something. Determined to mine the truth, detectives decide to go right at their prime suspect.
Did you?
No.
Know what?
No, I didn't do this. I didn't know anything about it. I walked in and I walked out, went to sleep, got up, went back in and reported it.
But that brings me back to the questions we just asked. You made it at least halfway into that bedroom.
I did make it, and I admit that, and I'll admit that in front of whoever needs to hear it. But I want to make that perfectly clear that my stance on this is exactly what I said. I went in for whatever reason it was. I didn't react.
Without forensic evidence to hold him, Eric is free to go, but investigators vow to keep their eye on him. And the deeper they look, the more circumstantial evidence starts to build up.
We did do a pretty thorough background, as we always do. And one thing we found out is that Eric did have a little bit of assaultive past with prior girlfriends and an ex-wife. It seems like he has some violent tendencies.
One of the strangest facts in this case is that Eric Wolf has a father who is serving a life sentence in prison for his own first-degree murder conviction.
He was convicted on a cold case homicide investigation in the 90s and was serving life in prison for murder. So that certainly put up a red flag to us.
Was it possible that violent tendencies run in the family? Even if they did, what possible reason would Eric have to want his fiancée dead?
The homicide occurred in August, and I believe their wedding was planned in September. We talked with her parents and her friends. They told me that Franny had second thoughts, and they were trying to convince her that if she was not prepared to get married, that maybe she should wait. And they also said Eric had second thoughts. Eric may have got cold feet, didn't want to get married, didn't know how to end the relationship.
While police work diligently to prove Eric's guilt, Francis's friends wait and wonder.
We didn't know what was going on. Nobody knew what was going on and what happened with Francis and how she was murdered. We just knew she was dead.
Behind the scenes, police work tirelessly. They obtain a search warrant to collect Francis's and Eric's electronics, but quickly realize that Francis's cell phone is missing.
We do find the cell phone near Franny's house. It had been thrown up against a tree and damaged. Again, we're thinking that the cell phone has some pretty valuable information.
The cellular phone data quite often can be some of the most compelling evidence.
We were able to get the phone records, and nothing really stuck out as being her, Franny communicating with anybody that would give us suspicion.
With no unusual cell phone activity or signs of forced entry on the day of the murder, police stay focused on Eric.
Eric Wolf at the time was at work, and investigators went and checked out, what they could to verify his alibi.
Police checked the company's security cameras.
They do have one entrance. They do have a time card check-in, check-out system. We were able to verify he was at work, or allegedly at work, when the incident occurred. The problem with the system is there's some other exits that they're not supposed to use, but some of them have cameras, but other ones do not.
Was he able to leave his place of employment and get home to commit a murder and have all of that be undetected? Eric was the only person we could figure who would have any reason to want Franny dead.
Police investigating the homicide of 28-year-old Frances Craig cannot confirm her fiancé's alibi, since not every exit at his workplace had a security camera.
We couldn't rule out that sometime during the night he left and then came back.
Eric's shaky alibi and suspicious behavior at the crime scene doesn't give police enough to arrest him, but it does leave them with a drastic course of action.
If you are operating in a murder investigation thinking that man killed his fiancée in the home where the children were, you are thinking, we want to keep the children safe. We kept Eric's daughter from him while we tried to figure out what happened to Franny.
Both Eric's and Franny's daughters are removed from Eric's home and put in the custody of family members. With pressure mounting, detectives need to move fast to prove their theory, or find a more plausible one.
At that point, we tried to determine any communication Franny may have been having with someone other than her fiancé.
Franny had an ex-boyfriend. He no longer lived in the area, but he had returned to the area recently and had some level of connection or interaction with Franny.
The police press Franny's ex. Could he have committed this heinous crime?
That young man was a nice young man, came from a very, very nice family.
And he did have an alibi where he was at the time of the incident. We were able to verify that alibi, so we were able to eliminate him.
If no one in Frances's immediate circle wished her harm, what about her coworkers? Detectives learned that while Frances worked at a retail store, she was involved in a frightening incident.
Where Franny was working, there was a couple shoplifters that had stolen some clothing. She confronted them.
The confrontation turned to violence when the mother of the two young shoplifters jumped in, attacking Frances. The assault left Frances with a severe eye injury, as well as emotional scars.
The incident at work left Frances really scared, nervous, cautious.
The mother of the shoplifters was actually criminally charged for a crime for the assault, some type of unarmed robbery. She was convicted.
So there was some concern that maybe this was a retaliation for that situation.
We did surprise them with a visit. They did have alibis on where they would have been at that time that the incident occurred.
Investigators are able to verify those alibis, eliminating the women as suspects. Frustrated detectives are still hoping that DNA from the crime scene will help them find the killer. But while they wait for results from the crime lab, the people of Jackson attend Franny's funeral. their emotions raw from the news of her violent death.
Her mail carrier showed up to her funeral because she left such an impact on that person. That's how loved and how missed Frances Craig is.
This was definitely a shock to the community because we don't have that many homicides.
I was scared. I just didn't know what to expect.
I was afraid to leave the house. I was afraid to do anything because we still had no answers as to what happened.
The overwhelming feeling was the pressure we were under to get this right.
Determined to find justice for Franny, investigators continue to drill down on Frances's fiancé. Hoping for an inside look at Eric Wolf, they bring in one of the couple's former roommates.
Ryan Marshall was friends with Eric Wolf. So Eric and Franny welcomed Ryan into their home to stay with them.
His house had caught on fire and she was trying to help a friend out.
He lived with them until April of 2014. The homicide happened August of 2014, so he had a pretty good knowledge of the two of them. He said everything was good, and he actually vouched for Eric, saying Eric was a really good guy and a friend for a long time, and doesn't feel that Eric would ever do anything to harm Franny.
Speaking with Ryan doesn't give police new reasons to suspect Eric, but it doesn't clear him either.
3 months in, we've pretty much eliminated everybody of interest, anyone close to Franny other than Eric. But we don't have enough evidence to present to the prosecutor.
But then, a new piece of information arrives that brings a new suspect into the spotlight.
There was DNA found on Franny's zip tie.
Three months after Frances Craig's murder, the lab results from the crime scene finally arrive, and they provide a huge break in the case.
We're notified through a national index. The DNA located on the zip ties matched DNA in a database.
When somebody commits a felony, they have to submit to a DNA test. Somebody's DNA showed up on the zip ties that were used in the homicide. We get a name of Cortez Butler.
Who is Cortez Butler? Police waste no time looking into his criminal record.
We find out Cortez Butler served approximately 25 years for murder and was currently on parole in the Detroit area.
But we knew almost nothing else. We tried to determine if we could connect Cortez Butler to Franny Craig, to Eric Wolf, and we came up with nothing. We tried to determine if he had family locally, and we came up with nothing.
In fact, Cortez Butler appears to have no connection to Jackson whatsoever.
So we looked in our database to see if we have any Cortez Butlers in any police report we've done, any place in Jackson County, and we find none.
Then it was this mad scramble of, well, then how do we even tie Cortez Butler to this? For all we know, he may have worked at Home Depot, and his DNA may be on these zip ties for a completely innocent reason.
The investigators connected with Cortez's parole officer. They got Cortez's phone number. A search warrant was prepared and signed for Cortez Butler's phone records. We learned that Cortez Butler's phone was in Jackson on the early morning hours of August 10th, the actual time of the murder. the rest of those phone records, almost exclusively placed it in and around the greater Detroit area, never in Jackson.
But what reason would Butler have to harm Franny?
Eric remained the prime suspect. He was the only dude with a motive.
Maybe Eric was not ready to get married and didn't know how to end a relationship.
So then the thought process was, did Eric hire this person to kill Franny?
The cell phone records also connect Butler to some other shady characters.
We were able to identify a Clifford and Rodney McKee as being connected to Cortez Butler. Clifford McKee lived in the Detroit area. Clifford McKee was in prison for approximately 20 years for murder. We found out that Rodney McKee, he was a big heroin dealer in Jackson. We found out that he had committed an arson.
The arson that Rodney McKee perpetrated was against Donna and Ryan Marshall.
The police are stunned. Ryan Marshall is Eric Wolf's friend. The one who had been welcomed into Franny and Eric's home after his house burned down. But what kind of a connection could Ryan possibly have to a drug dealer like Rodney McKee?
Ryan Marshall's mother had been a heroin dealer for Rodney McKee.
But after months of dealing for Rodney, Ryan's mother decided she wanted out.
Donna Marshall refused to sell heroin for Rodney McKee.
Rodney didn't like to be told no.
Ryan's mother, Donna, held her ground, but Rodney retaliated.
Rodney McKee attempted to burn down a house with Ryan Marshall and his mother in it.
Ryan witnessed it all. He then contacted police.
What was the connection between Eric Wolf, Cortez Butler, the Marshalls, and a drug dealer from Detroit? Detectives knew there was only one person who could answer the question, and soon they'd have a chance to ask him face to face.
Cortez Butler was arrested for yet another murder. Not Franny's murder, but another murder in the greater Detroit area.
We went down there in Detroit with one sole purpose: to gather information from Cortez Butler on what happened to Franny and hopefully be able to explain to us what Eric's role in this whole thing was. But Cortez said he wasn't going to talk without any kind of a deal.
It was clear that whatever Cortez was going to say, it was not going to be, quote unquote, on the record.
Investigators have DNA evidence and phone records that link convicted killer Cortez Butler to Francis Craig's murder. They arranged to talk to him while he's detained for an unrelated homicide. But he immediately tries to shut them down.
Cortez said he wasn't going to talk without any kind of a deal. I said, no one is giving you any kind of a deal without anyone knowing what you have to say.
Detectives press Butler hard until he finally agrees to talk. But only on one condition.
Cortez very pointedly and specifically asked repeatedly to not have the interview recorded.
If detectives agree not to record the interview, there's a chance Butler's testimony won't stand up in court. Still, with no other leads in the case, they decide to roll the dice.
We were there interviewing Cortez in the first place because we need to find out Eric Wolf's involvement in this. and it was dire that we did so as the children were about to go back with Eric Wolf. The whole idea for that was to keep these kids safe.
So the detectives tried to read him his rights. He didn't even want to be bothered with the rights. I know my rights. I think it was, bro, I know my rights, bro.
Butler wastes no time getting right to the point.
Cortez looked at me and said, "You have it all wrong." And I said, "Have what all wrong?" And he, at that time, let us know that Eric had absolutely nothing to do with this murder.
He goes, "I don't know this dude you're talking about, know nothing about him. Just trust me, he was not involved in this whatsoever."
The statement contradicts one of the investigators' strongest leads, but the next thing Butler says is even more explosive.
Cortez identifies himself as the killer. I remember thinking to myself, I'm glad we're sitting down right now, because I was almost in disbelief.
If Eric wasn't involved, why had this cold-blooded criminal murdered a woman to whom he had no obvious connection? It all went back to Rodney McKee's arson case.
Rodney McKee attempted to burn down a house with Ryan Marshall and his mother in it. Ryan Marshall was a key witness in his arson case.
He made some threats to Ryan that either he not agree to testify or he was going to be killed.
Cortez told us that he had been hired by Rodney McKee to kill Ryan Marshall.
First, Butler had to find Ryan, who was homeless because of the fire.
So we found out from Cortez Butler that they had bad information. They had information that Ryan Marshall was living with Francis Craig and Eric Wolf.
Cortez Butler entered Francis and Eric's house to kill someone who was no longer there.
Franny wasn't even the intended target. Franny was as innocent of a victim as anybody could ever be. When he opened the door, he had made the decision that he was killing somebody while he was there.
He doesn't have to force entry. He gets into the house. He noticed the bedrooms have some kids in it. He walks past them and he goes to Franny Craig's room. When he gets to Franny Craig's room, he asks her where Ryan is. She said he's not there. Cortez tells Franny not to look at him. In his words, he stated she looked at him, so he had to kill her.
The horrific details that Cortez reveals next leave detectives with no doubt about the guilt of the man sitting across from them.
He decided to bind her, trying to get information from her, but she would not cooperate.
Cortez stabbed her multiple times.
We will never know how long he took to torture her and butcher her. And it clearly took time and effort to stab and slice her in the manner that he did. She died in the service of keeping Ryan's identity and his location secret, and/or she quite frankly just didn't know.
Cortez Butler's chilling confession is nothing short of a game changer, both for detectives and for Eric Wolf.
It eliminated our hypothesis that Eric Wolf was responsible for Franny's death.
Eric wasn't involved. He's an odd duck kind of guy.
Eric was able to regain custody of his daughter.
I took from this case that we can never jump to conclusions. I was pretty convinced that he did it, not to the point that I could charge him, but I was pretty convinced I had the right person.
Now that investigators do have the right person, they're determined to put Cortez Butler away for life. But all of that is in jeopardy.
I didn't believe that Cortez's confession would be legally admissible in court because it wasn't recorded. And if Cortez Butler ever walked free again, I don't know that any of us are safe.
After months of dead ends, investigators finally have a confession from Francis Craig's killer. But prosecutors are concerned that his testimony may not hold up in court.
I was concerned that it would be legally inadmissible because it wasn't recorded. He was basically told, we're not planning to use this in court against you. I was concerned that he had not been properly advised of his Miranda rights. But we still had his DNA on the zip ties and the cell phone records. So I kept thinking, and I finally got myself legally to a point where I was convinced that we need to give this a shot.
In October of 2015, Cortez Butler is charged with Francis's murder. When the trial begins 6 months later, Butler appears relaxed, almost giddy.
Cortez really seemed to thrive in that trial atmosphere. He would seek out cameras and smile at them, give them this big, full teeth smile.
He wanted to fight just because he could. He wanted to run the show just because he could.
But that's just a warm-up for the verbal assault he launches into when he takes the stand.
Cortez Butler was a monster at that trial. He bragged on how many bodies he had. It was unbearable.
Butler gleefully describes his murderous past in gory detail. But when asked about killing Francis, he fiercely denies it.
He clearly was so excited to say why he didn't commit this murder because he pleads to all of his murders, and he clearly didn't commit this one because he didn't plead to it.
Butler also denies ever confessing to police. But in a victory for prosecutors, the judge allows detectives to testify about Butler's confession.
We're able to get past that piece because he wasn't in custody for our case. He wasn't actually entitled to his Miranda warnings.
Eyewitness accounts play a major role in trying to move the jury, beginning with Eric's daughter, who found Franny dead.
Alexis was our first witness up there, and I don't know that I will ever forget the audible gasps and sobs and emotion pouring from the jury just from that first witness.
The physical evidence is laid out.
We have Cortez Butler's DNA on the zip ties that were used in the homicide, and we also have phone tracking information showing Cortez Butler in Jackson.
Prosecutors make a compelling case, but without a recording of Butler's confession, it's the detective's word against Butler's. When the jury returns with the verdict, there's no guarantee which way the cards will fall.
Cortez Butler was convicted of first-degree murder, and he won't ever walk free again.
The sentence was life without the possibility of parole for the premeditation murder of Franny Craig.
This was a complicated story to tell to a jury. It is a difficult one for all of us to wrap our brains around, even still.
Cortez goes to look for Ryan at her house, and he doesn't find him and murders Franny in her own bed while she's doing nothing wrong.
Franny had no connection to her killer whatsoever. We can rest maybe a little easier that the bad guys won't ever hurt anybody else, at least not outside of the walls of prison. But none of it brings Franny back.
Today, Frances's 2 daughters live with their father. Those closest to Frances do everything they can to hold on to her memory.
Franny's family, I know, they've been lost ever since. I've been lost ever since Frances has been murdered.
I want people to remember how happy of a person she was, how generous, how nice and kind she was.
I miss Frances so much, and there's not a day that goes by that I do not think about her. I know that she's watching over everybody and making sure that everybody's good, because that's the type of person she was.
I wish I had known her, and I hope I honored her in my handling of this case.
For more information on an unexpected killer, go to oxygen.com.